Hello, and welcome back to the Next Frontiers of AI podcast, where we explore the real-world strategies and success stories that are shaping the future of enterprise AI. I'm Scott Hebner, your host and principal analyst at the Cube Research. Thanks so much for tuning in. As we've been discussing throughout this series, we are entering a new golden age of AI agents, a new super cycle of innovation. And while generative AI has dominated the early headlines, I think the real story now is the shift to agentic AI, digital coworkers that go beyond creating content and automating tasks to actually reasoning, making decisions, and collaborating in the flow of work. That's why I'm so excited to share today new findings from the Agentic AI Futures Index. This survey indicates that the number of companies deploying AI agents will scale significantly over the next 18 months, as will the investment priorities shift towards focusing on enabling reasoning and decision-making capabilities. The message is quite clear. The focus has shifted from demonstrating generative AI's potential in delivering tangible ROI through agents that can now act as knowledge workers and decision makers. This is driving generative AI and LLMs from being the main focus of investment to becoming the foundational gateway to AI with a new layer of innovation capabilities rolling out rapidly on top of it. Yet the barriers are quite clear, as we found in our survey. The transition from aspirations to strategy to execution continues to be, highly challenging to say the least. And at the very top of the list is trust. Trust is emerging as the currency of innovation. No trust, no ROI. So joining me to unpack of all this and share real-world lessons from deploying AI agents in real business settings is Paul Chada. He's the CEO and founder of DoozerAI. Paul has been on the front line selling, building, and scaling AI agents that deliver measurable business outcomes and is one of the most thoughtful and insightful influencers in the public discourse around agentic AI. And you should be following him if you're not. But let me bring Paul up on the screen here and welcome you to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for the nice, warm welcome.
So where are you, by the way?
So I'm based here about 10 minutes south of Irvine in California.
Yes.
So people always listen to my accent and think, where is he originally from? So I was born and raised in Ireland and came to California in 2013 with my family.
That's awesome. So we've been in California. I've been in on the other side of the coast forever in Connecticut and in New York area, where, by the way, it's going to be 80 degrees tomorrow. So,
oh my goodness, yeah, no.
Winter was coming, and now I guess this is what you call Indian summer. So, anyhow, so Paul, let's start with talk a little bit about you. Tell us your personal journey. How you founded Doozer.ai and what shaped your point of view on the state of ROI in the enterprise.
Okay, thanks, Scott. So believe it or not, I originally studied AI at Edinburgh University in college, and then I went into the automation space. So my first job was actually working on a team building an automation platform that ended up being a Gartner-rated BPM and case management platform. And by that stage, when it was acquired by a California company, I was over here. I was in enterprise sales and did that for quite a successful career for about 5 years. And then I left to join a startup to build a new low-code platform. And while I was doing the R&D for that, GPT-3 was out, and we started experimenting. I started working with an ex-colleague and friend, Gavin O'Kane, and we started seeing that using these LLM models, not only could it generate, great emails and content, but it actually could, coupled with some of the integration that we built in the past, we realized that it could actually reach some of these hard to reach ROI use cases that previously had been sort of untouchable. And so that's why we decided to build and actually before we started to build a platform, we originally built an email agent for doing insurance requotes, and we demoed it to Allstate Insurance. And it was very simple. It was complex back then, but it seems simple now. And it was basically you just email your quote into an email address, and the agent would automatically read all the information, hit the reading engine, and then recode it for you the same way a person would have done. And what we realized was, well, the person sending it in, they think there's a person on the other side of that. They don't realize that it's an AI agent. And so we thought, well, what if we built out the capabilities behind that to allow organizations to, build all the capabilities required to actually accomplish those knowledge worker tasks? Then we could package them up and actually provide them as off-the-shelf capabilities.
Yeah, I think we first talked, I don't know, it was maybe 9 months ago. I remember it was really cold and snowing here in Connecticut, but I think it was back in the beginning of the year. And the one thing that really struck out to me was when I went to your website, Doozer.ai, it sort of reminded me of like Indeed or LinkedIn Jobs, where you're going out and you had a list of all these agents to hire, and they had names, and what kind of worker are you looking for? And I think you were on the early fringe of that for sure, because I didn't see too many of them back at that time, when the technology was just starting to kind of, people talk about agentic and the idea of AI agents, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, thank you. And it was part of it was sort of trying to bridge that sort of cultural gap in an organization of people wanting to work alongside a digital agent. And so we thought, giving them names and clearly if they have email addresses, then you have a way to communicate with them. And obviously you've Slack and Teams now as well. But if instead of it being productized, like it's a data entry system or it's an accounts payable system, we thought, well, I just need my invoice processed, or I need my expense claim done, and therefore I'm just going to email it to Sally in accounts, or I'm going to email it to Emily at another company, and so by trying to sort of amorthize these kind of capabilities, it just makes it a bit more approachable in an enterprise setting,
Yeah, and I think you were on, I think, again, the leading edge also of this notion of digital labor transformation, which the podcast we did last week, was all about the digital labor transformation index, where it was one of our surveys that we've been doing. We've been doing a lot of surveys recently, 625 people. And clearly, digital labor is inevitable. I think it was 90% plus of these respondents basically said that they agree with the statement that today's leaders will be the last ones to manage a human-only workforce, right?
Yeah.
And so I think we're well on our way. That's, this isn't just about technology and automation and, helping people get things done faster. It's not about the IT department. It's about the labor market, which is, by the way, labor expense is about 60% of the average enterprise's expense. So if you can give superpowers to your teams and get more done, and not just more done, but get things done better with better decisions and better problem solving and better root cause analysis of problems, and be able to look at emerging trends more effectively. I mean, it's going to be hard to measure that, but the ROI is profoundly bigger than what we just went through over the last many years around generative AI and, getting tasks done better and faster, right?
Yeah. And there's kind of, in my mind, there's sort of two ways to look at this. One is the knowledge worker in organizations, they're already using ChatGPT to great advantage. They know how to use ChatGPT to make their job easier. And so they're doing that. There's a little bit of a sort of kind of a shadow industry where they're, without their employer knowing, they're actually using it to help their job and make their decisions better and faster. And then the other thing, where the angle we come at it is, well, we take those automations that are going into ChatGPT and we put them into agent flows, and we sort of encapsulated it within an idea of an agent that's then going to work alongside the knowledge worker to basically sort of hive off a lot of the hard work of being able to maybe read documents, look at pictures, look at sort of bubble up the decision making, as it were, to the human being, and eventually, of course, you're going to have situations where then you're hands off and you let the knowledge work, you let the digital worker, completely autonomously take action and do that, because you've seen it make the correct decision so many times that you now trust it. And I think we're in that sort of phase where organizations are just wanting to run it in parallel. And I think as an organization at DoozerAI, we see that's the best example. Build an agent, run it in parallel with your existing workforce, and then you can sort of ease up on the human oversight over time. And the best example of that is we have a financial reporting agent, and I'd say, I joke with other people, it took us probably a week and a half to build the agent, to have all the capabilities and crunch the numbers and get the information from the different systems. But we did run it for at least a month, because over that course of a month, there was different situations that arise. The goals changed during the month. Okay, we need an agent to be able to respond to changing goals, and maybe there was the second week in the month, something else happens. Okay, the agent needs to accommodate that. And I think successful agents that get deployed are the ones that are the least brittle. The most, you need reliability, you need robustness, and you need sort of that sort of dependability so that people will accept them. Otherwise, the agent's just going to, it'll be a shiny new object and it'll be cast aside. So for us, it's all about adoption and reliability.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think underneath all that is the trust element. And also, one of my predictions back in January for this year was that, without going all into details of it, was that generative AI, LLMs, were going to turn out to be like the browser wars of the early internet age, where they were the main focus of attention, most critical decision you can ever make. But it turned out that was how you built around the browser, is where the ROI came from. And I think the same thing is true with the generative AI, right? And like you said, it's a foundational capability that you then build around with the agents and the additional automations and all these new technologies that are coming on the scene. So, and there's a lot to do in the years ahead here. So let me, I'm going to show you a chart here in a second on just where we are from our AI futures, Agentic AI Futures Index, on where the state of adoption is for Agentic AI. And then from your perspective at Doozer, curious to what you see driving this acceleration. And are these organizations really prepared to move beyond, pilots and, experimentation to real deployment with real workers at their side? But let me just kind of explain this one chart here. So the Agentic AI Futures Index, fresh data from September, 625 pre-qualified AI business and tech leaders. So they're involved with AI projects in their company. 61 questions, 9 different job titles, 13 industries. So we asked a pretty good panel here that makes this increasingly statistically valid. But it was 61% said that they plan to deploy AI agents over the next 18 months. 55% are working on them now. It grows to 61% if you went out over the full 18 months. So clearly there is a shift. That's a pretty good number for this early in the cycle, I think.
Yeah, and no, it definitely is. I think there's a couple of things behind that. One, there's a lot of executives out there who are saying they're doing agents or using agents and or deploying them for the shareholder and for the board, because they're being asked, what are you doing with AI? You need to be doing something with AI. But the ones who are actually rolling their sleeves up and doing the great work of deploying agents, I think they're taking a very measured approach for the ones that are actually going live. They're choosing some of the easy wins to get the technology in place, right? And so some of those I wouldn't classify as really agentic. They're not quite autonomous. However, they are automation using LLMs, and that's okay. I think it's fine to just get the technology in place, the infrastructure, understand what it's good at and what it's not good at, and then build on that. And I think through that and involving the workforce, it allows better adoption. And so you look at the MIT study, there was sort of big flashing headlines, 90% are failing. And then it's interesting because in that, it actually said that the ones that tried to build it themselves were more likely to fail than the ones that just bought a platform. And then I kind of wonder, well, is that because they weren't under the time crunch of a vendor and therefore could take a longer view on it because it was in-house? So that's possible, but I think really from talking to industry, they do want help. They do want outside experts coming in and helping to advise them as to, well, what's worked well for others, Some are waiting for the larger companies to roll out agents. But the way I look at that is, why would I wait for the Salesforces or the Oracles to have maturity? Because all I'm doing is allowing my competitors to have that same advantage. And so I would move quick and scale up from that. And that's kind of our goal, is basically get an agent in place, have it doing something useful, see, light up the eyes of the workforce in terms of what the art of the possible is, and then start rolling out more, in that sort of fashion.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it just reflects the notion that it's changing from a software automation market to a labor market, because if you do your agents right, you can decouple them from the SaaS applications and the infrastructure, and you can literally hire and fire based on performance. So why wait around? It's like, I'm not going to do anything new until, it's just wait until you wouldn't wait to hire humans, right? And by the way, in one of those 61 questions in our research survey was about how do you plan to acquire AI agents, and the least of all were build it themselves. I think it was acquire or source. So it's platform vendors, it's people that sell specialized agents, it was systems integrators and consulting firms, application providers, but very, very small number. I think it was in the teens, low teens, if I remember correctly, we're going to actually try to build it themselves. And I think that MIT study reflects why you should probably not do that, right? You should view it as you're going to hire some digital workers is essentially what you're going to do, right?
Exactly. And then the whole, I don't think organizations want to have 15 different agents from 15 different companies. Okay, I have to buy the SDR from this company, I'm going to buy the telephony from another, and basically, they have that term agent sprawl now, where you've got so many different agents doing different things, but they're not talking to one another. And you would never hire a workforce like that. You need your workforce to be able to communicate with one another. So building it on an agent platform, whilst you build it off the shelf or buy it off the shelf, but then have a platform where at least the agents are in one place. Because if I'm running an organization, I don't want to have to go to 10 different platforms to see what's happening with those agents and how their performance is. You want to go to one, or you want to go to one or two. And so that's why I think the agent framework platform approach is much better, because the observability is in one place, the dashboards, just like if you were going into an HR system to see, how's your workforce doing, or you want to see payroll or whatever in terms of outputs or hours used, same sort of thing,
Yeah, no, I'm definitely with you on that. And it's sort of like your digital HR department, for being digital, because you're hiring digital workers to work with your human workers. And that kind of brings us to investment. So when we looked at the data, where the dollars are flowing in the survey, and we did digital labor transformation, we did agentic AI technology adoption, decision intelligence and reasoning, trust and governance and compliance, and we did causal AI. But when you kind of step back and look at it, it seems to me that it is flowing, the biggest flow is into the notion of AI reasoning and decision intelligence, so that these things can make judgment-based, tasks, or be able to make decisions that are based on a judgment, which Gen AI and LMs cannot do alone because they're statistical models, right? And so I'll show you a chart here. I'd love to get your reaction to one of the survey questions and hear what type of investments you're seeing being most critical to unlocking the ROI in this space. So here's the question on the right. How would you describe your organization's level of investment in AI reasoning and decision intelligence over the next 18 months? And we asked the same question for all 5 of those categories I mentioned before. This was the highest. 73% of enterprises are planning either significant or strategic investments in enabling AI agents that can reason. That's big numbers. If you follow surveys, anything that gets up into that range, when you add those together, shows a major shift is underway in terms of where investment's actually going. Thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think all of them are looking at their existing tasks or the existing roles of people within the organizations and seeing, well, how can we apply AI to make it better? And you see CEOs of these large companies coming up with these emails and letters, and a lot of them get leaked, of course, saying, we're an AI first company. Before you even reach for a spreadsheet, you need to go to ChatGPT and think about building an agent to do it. And it's so funny because really, when you look at any organization, it's a combination of systems and it's a combination of, spreadsheets on people's PCs that they're using today. And so I think these organizations are hip to that, and they want basically people to start thinking, okay, well, how do we automate the job function? And so the money is probably flowing mostly into less chatbots, more into knowledge worker tasks, right? It's all about you look at the knowledge worker, it's highly skilled, highly valued, very highly high judgment, etc. But it's also very expensive, and so I think they're laser focused on that type of role. And to your comment about Gen AI not being able to to make judgments, etc. I think people and these LLM companies have got very creative, and there's a lot of good papers out there in terms of the sort of what would be the planning models and reasoning models that basically iterate using the LLM in order to actually make very good judgments. It is still a synthetic judgment based on yes, it's probabilistic and it's not deterministic, but again, isn't human judgment a little bit like that, depending on whether they had a good Monday morning or it's a Friday?
Yeah, I think that's my point, is that generative AI, let's say LLMs alone, I think, are incapable of making judgments. But they are, what you're seeing is enterprises in particular, but I think the LLM providers, the generative AI, will start to build that expanded ecosystem on top of an LLM, right?
Yeah.
I think generative AI is just like the browser was a gateway into the internet. I see generative AI as being a gateway into the world of AI. It's democratizing it for people to use, but it still is a statistical model, LLMs are, that make predictions. And a prediction is not a judgment.
Right.
And you need judgments to be able to make decisions, and decisions are all about consequences. And so I think what's happening slowly but surely, people are starting to build upon the LLMs as a foundation with these extended capabilities. I think you're doing it with some of the automation stuff and learning capabilities. And I think our survey also found that. And even to your point, when you look at what people are looking to do, right, with the agents as they go forward in time here, primary activities, look at decision making, right, to assist in making better decisions. 62%, right, and you can see it's surrounded by being able to diagnose business problems, right, root cause analysis, if you will, and being able to plan to achieve goals and things of that nature. But 62% actually want these agents to help them make better decisions. And that's where I think this stuff is heading, because making decisions is what knowledge workers do, to your point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, and we are seeing, I feel like we may not have as many knowledge worker, digital agents deployed, across the industry as organizations may want. we're getting there. And the gap between, good enough and not good enough is shrinking, every day. And so I think the money is flowing into R&D and flowing into a lot of trials and pilots, etc. And even for take the example of the financial reporting agent that we built there, it's multi-step. It's giving the agent the autonomy to be able to decide, well, where am I going to get this information from? And when you run that, I think that one's been running for about like 5.5 months now. You get to feel that it's reliable. And I call up the customer and say, well, how's the agent running? Is it, is it making any mistakes? Is the output good enough? Seen any anomalies? And they're saying, no, it's running fine. And that's what you want. You need that sort of confidence in the agent in
100%.
some of the, and it's not a simple thing, but it's to you and me, it seems simple. But whenever you're asking
that's because you've extended the core LLM, right? And with the automation and the ability to learn and understand what was right and what wasn't right, and just gets better and better. Your point, I think, earlier about the month, right? And then you're seeing, to your other point about them in the R&D and extending generative AI and the LLMs with things like chain of thought, right? Which then you got Agentic RAG, which starts to provide a little bit of context. And then you got MCP, and then you got knowledge graphs that provide semantics and meaning and relationships among entities. And then I think that's going to evolve into causal knowledge graphs that actually understand cause and effect, and therefore consequences of different decisions that can be made. And so I think there's a progression of things that build layers on top of the LLMs as the core gateway, right? And I think that's where it's all heading to enable the kind of things we saw in the last chart. Probably ways to go here, but I think you guys are on a leading edge here of applying some of those technologies, and certainly domain-specific information to automation. And that's why I think you're having success with some of these things, is that they're able to adapt and learn, right? Within the workflow.
No, exactly. I mean, that's being able to go in when things do go wrong. It's being able to go in, see the agent flow, right click on the actual agent and see the decisioning and the chain of thought or the planning that it undertook. It comes up with a plan, comes up with a goal, and then you can see what steps it took to move itself towards the goal. And then sometimes, a call fails, or an API call fails, or it chose the wrong tool, in which case then you have to go and tighten up the agent in order to make sure that doesn't happen. But you need that ability to go in and see that at scale, and then then you get to a point where you actually have you look at your agent and you see a reliability percentage, and you can see, okay, well, 99.9, is that good enough? It's and then obviously it's very low at the start. And so we've built a lot of those things into the platform, like the things you're mentioning, like RAG, the ability to add sort of memory, and I think I'm seeing a lot more noise about that now, because we think memory is really important, because you might have an agent do something for you and ad hoc or on a repeated basis, but you then need to be able to talk to the agent and say, how are we doing, this week in terms of sales performance versus last week, right? And it needs to be able to answer that question, because a person would, a knowledge worker would be able to say, answer questions if a colleague asked it. So that's what we're focused on as well, is basically adding that, enhancing the agent memory, so it's both short-term and long-term, so it has more context and able to sort of add value outside of the things that it was originally envisaged for.
Yeah, that's why I love talking to you, because you have made a lot of progress here. And I'm going to show you another question from the survey, and at least half of them you should go talk to, because you've achieved human workers gaining confidence, having confidence in their agents, right? You have, like you've been mentioning a couple of examples of that, but if you take a look at this question, and this is where you get to the notion that the currency of innovation is going to be trust, right? No trust, no ROI. Only 49% have a high degree of trust in in these agents to make decisions. So a little bit more trust for planning. They think they can really some trust to build, solve problems and stuff like that. But when you start getting into actual, do I trust it to help me make a decision?
Yeah.
Over 50%, let's just say half of them don't have a very high degree of trust. And this was AI professionals, and we asked the same question of end users. Ironically, end users were a little bit more trustworthy or felt a little bit more trusted. I don't know whether it's because they're not, maybe they think a lot of this stuff is working better than it is. It seems to be a big gap. But clearly, this is the overriding challenge I think these companies that are moving into the world of agentic AI and digital workers have to address, or anything, is going to be trust. And that's not just a technology thing, it's a cultural thing, right?
Yeah, because we've all seen, when you talk with ChatGPT or with Claude, how malleable it is in terms of its answer. You could ask it something and it gives you an answer, and then you say, but I was thinking it was this, and it goes, oh, you're right, it is this, and you're like, well, you didn't stand by your decision, and I just threw something at you, and now you change your mind completely. And it's the same thing with agents. You have to be very laser focused about the context that an agent has available to it in order to make sure that the agent's going to make the right decision. Otherwise, it's going to be very non-deterministic. It's going to be, it's going to change. There's going to be high variability. And another example of that is sometimes when you're talking to LLMs and it's getting information from the outside world, well, depending on where it's getting it from at that particular time, that could influence the decision. And so again, it's the sort of thing when you're building an agent to be truly agentic, you have to be very measured about the way you expose the agent to external information. And all of that are the things that organizations grapple with to actually put it into production, because the last thing you need is an agent that's you can persuade it to bend to your will.
Right. It just wants to appease you, right?
Yes.
Yeah, a yes man or a yes woman that just.
If it's a loan officer, and if it's a loan officer or a claims adjuster, then that could be catastrophic.
Yeah, you think about that's the difference between being an assistant, digital assistant, versus being a digital partner, coworker, where you're actually working with each other, right?
Yeah.
So let me just show you another thing, and because we're getting close to time here, which is my view from what I learned in this section of our survey that brings together basically the top line message here, right? So investment. You can see we did these maturity curves where you're able to rate from 1 or from 0 to 5 where you are on the maturity index. Mm-hmm. So investment, 3.7. That's actually ahead of the median, and so I think there's a rich amount of investment that is going into AI reasoning, the technology, the strategies, the intent. When you look at the use cases around knowledge work, it drops off a little bit to 3.1. I think people aren't being quite as visionary as they could be, or understand the capabilities that could be put to bear. But that's pretty solid still for early days. But again, to what we were just talking about, Paul, the trust factor, it drops down to 2.4 on the index, right? So again, that's where the focus needs to be really on, is you got to have trust, and particularly among the people that are going to be using these things. Otherwise, no one's going to work with it. If you don't trust a human coworker, you're not going to work with that coworker very well either, right?
Exactly. And that's it. You just got to, as you roll out agents, you've just got to do it, start small, build upon the successes, gain adoption, and then that trust will increase. And so I think it'll be very interesting to take that measurement again in 6 months' time.
Yeah.
And see how it's improved, or hopefully it has improved, because I think we're very early to this still, and I think organizations are rightly being cautious. So whilst a lot of the big headlines will say, that we're rolling out agents everywhere, and it might look as if, my goodness, things are steamrolling ahead. I think that's more noise than reality. And I think the organizations that are quietly deploying agents that succeed and are adopted, they're the ones that ultimately are going to succeed in the long run.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. And probably the next podcast, maybe if not the one after that, I'm going to unveil the Agentic AI Trust Index, which was part of this survey.
Right.
And I think you're right. This is the thing that has to be nailed by companies. You got to have the trust, not only in the accuracy and the outcomes if you're making real business critical decisions, but the people have to trust it. And if the people don't trust it, and by the way, just a little bit of insight into what I learned in that survey, I think the number one thing to do to make sure it's trustworthy is get it to become more explainable and understandable. Explainability becomes really important because people just tend to agree and go with things that can be explained to them so it makes sense. These black boxes are not good because you're just like, it's telling me to potentially make this decision, but it's not explaining to me very well why that's the right decision and why is that better than other possible decisions, right? And so we'll get into that in a future podcast. So before we have to wrap here, one last question for you. What would be the bottom line advice you'd give people that are just getting started, over that 61% that are starting to deploy agents and not just to automate tasks, but actually to pair up with coworkers to help them as a knowledge worker? What's the key piece of advice you got? And then two, just tell us a little bit about where people can go learn more about DoozerAI and actually get in touch with you.
Yeah. Okay. So I think my main advice would be, start small, but think big, right? But actually start. And that also means rolling out AI throughout the organization to your employees, get them thinking about how to actually use AI. Bring in some digital workers for some quick wins. Start doing some put in agents so people start getting used to them, and then actually maybe even do workshops within your organization to sort of have sort of ideas or hackathon type things where people can start thinking about how to use agents within the organizations to improve things. So I think sometimes those sort of competitive workshops can be fun and done the right way. And I think obviously you have to have someone allocated to think governance, as you scale. So always have one look on that. And I think the other thing is, so focus on the integration, not just the innovation as well. You need to bring along all of the capabilities within in-house, and that involves IT and it involves business. And so it's a real cross-functional thing. So to learn more about DoozerAI, you can go to our website, DOOZER.ai. We're active on LinkedIn. We put out videos, and we regularly sort of engage with our constituents. We're happy to do a demo. If anyone on the back of this would love to see a demo of DoozerAI and what we've built and the problems we solve for companies, we'd love to show it to you.
Yeah, and I'll just say, as a firsthand reader of all your posts, you I think I said up front, very insightful, very well thought out. I learned a ton from you when I read you're not just reiterating the hype and the marketing stuff. You're taking your real world experience and actually translating it into things that people need to think about, which is great. So I encourage you all to go out to LinkedIn and follow Paul. I think you'll learn a lot. And again, thank you for being a part of this podcast. Love the insights. Always love our conversations. Continuous learning is what this is all about, right? And I do every time I talk to you.
No, thank you, Scott. I think all of the insights. It's great having the index to understand exactly, a measurement across the industry, and I'm looking forward to the next one and the other ones to learn how things are moving along. Thank you.
Nothing better than data, right? Especially
exactly. Yeah, that's right. Appreciate it.
You bet. And for our listeners, I think the takeaway is quite clear here, right? Agentic AI is no longer it's not a future vision. It's unfolding right now. And as we always say, the game is played on the field, not in the dugout. So be careful not to fall behind, because you may never catch up with these innovation cycles moving so quickly. And I think the new game is going to be around reasoning and decision intelligence being infused into these agents, and then nailing this notion of trust among the actual users. If you would like to explore the Agentic AI Futures Index survey data in more detail, or leverage into these insights to help drive your strategy or market impact, I welcome an opportunity to connect with you directly. You can reach me at Scott Hebner on LinkedIn, or scott@siliconangle.com. Hope to hear from you. And don't forget to subscribe to the Next Frontiers of AI podcast so you don't miss future episodes. Until next time, I'm Scott Hebner. Thanks for being a part of today's podcast. We'll see you real soon. Bye for now.